everybody. Welcome to the first annual or first ever assembly required virtual convention. We are Joe Declassified, and we're here to talk to you today about G.I. Joe mailaways. I'm Chris Murray. Also is Pat Stewart, Troy McGee, and Christopher McLeod. Let us start by telling you a little bit about ourselves. Pat?
Okay, actually, Troy.
Troy?
All right, let me tell you about Pat. Pat collects G.I. Joes. He's kind of a variation expert. Joe Declassified is a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization founded by G.I. Joe fans for G.I. Joe fans. Our mission, to build a better community by creating relationships, unearthing history, doing exhaustive research, and sharing with the fans at large.
Okay, and today what we're going to be talking about, because we realized that there were a lot of mail-ins, we discussed whether or not we should include all the vehicles, all of the belts and hats and everything, but that would just take way too long. And we also talked about whether or not we should include all of the figures, since we're going to be talking about the figures. But in the end, we kind of decided that what we should do is just pare it down to only the figures that were unique whenever they came out. So not any of the figures that were kind of a second chance to get something that had already been at retail. We would also like to thank yojo.com, 3djoes.com, Kirk Bazigian, Ron Rudat, Dan Klingensmith, and bloodforthebaron.com for information and images used in this presentation.
So the mailaways were a rather interesting phenomenon in how it was created. So I think what we want to start this off with is playing an audio clip that we have from Kirk Bazigian talking with 3D Joes about how the mailaway promotions were created.
When we finally convinced Stephen Hassenfeld to allow us to do G.I. Joe again, and he fell in love with the idea of the comic book as a way of promoting the brand, etc. One of the things he said is, you have to do me a favor. You have to study what Palitoy has been doing in England. Now, Palitoy was Hasbro's licensee for G.I. Joe in the United Kingdom. Palitoy was making 12-inch G.I. Joes at the time. Palitoy had come up with an idea, and I believe they called it star points. Every package had a series of stars on the package, depending on the price point. You collected the stars for special merchandise. Join a fan club, get a sticker, get a patch. He wanted us to examine that. So Bob, who had contacts at Palitoy, brought in samples, we examined it, and we put together our flag point system. We went almost the whole year printing and shipping product with flag points. When we started getting letters from little kids saying, I've got 15 flag points, I've got 25 flag points, what do I do with them? We hadn't had time to come up with anything. Bob said, why don't we hold back the Cobra Commander as a premium and not ship him in our regular line. And I think also because the reason we did that was because he was being developed later. His design came together maybe a month after the other two. We put together the special offer. Funny story about the special offer is Christmas comes, Christmas of 1982. Now, I had always made it a practice of every couple of weeks going to our consumer affairs department because I knew the woman who was in charge of it, and I'd get her a cup of coffee and we'd chat. What's going on? What are consumers complaining about? What do they like? What do they like? So Angela loved me for this because I took the time to visit with her and try to understand what it was her department was doing. I talked to her about, oh, by the way, we've got this flag point thing and Christmas is coming and we've got this Cobra Commander offer. She said, well, how many do you think we're going to be redeeming? I said, well, it got in late. We're not sure. Maybe 5,000. So she said, okay. We went away for Christmas. I come back January 2nd, January 3rd, and my phone on my desk is flashing. So I have a phone message. So I pick up the phone, I dial it up, and it's Angela. She must have sent me 11 different messages because she didn't realize I was on vacation. Young man, when you get this message, come up to my office. So I go running over, and I walk in, and I said, what's up? She goes, you're in big trouble. I'm thinking, what did I do? She follow me. She takes me down the 3 flights of stairs to the back of the building, and in the back of the building is a 20 by 30 foot secured area made of chicken wire, floor to ceiling, 20 feet tall. And in that secured area had to be 500 canvas mail bags from the U.S. Post Office. And she said, you know what's in every one of those bags? No, what's in those bags, Angela? Your Cobra Commander offer, along with money, cash money. We had to build this secure area over Christmas vacation because when we came back the day after Christmas, the post office was delivering these bags to us. And they keep coming. Every day we get more and more. We redeemed 125,000 Cobra Commanders between January 3rd and March 31st. That's how big an impact that promotion had.
So, you know, that was awesome. That was great. Basically learning that the idea was came from Palatoy and how they ended up taking that, and I feel that we improved upon it.
Lies.
But, you know, it's also really interesting is that, you know, they didn't have they had the idea and they instigated the idea. They started making flag points, but they didn't actually have a plan on how to use them. They just ran with it. So it's interesting how they came up with the idea of just using Cobra Commander that they already planned to release to retail, and instead they just held it back. And it's really cool is the demand. You know, they had no idea that this would be so popular. You know, like he said, they only expected to do 5,000 Cobra Commanders to be given out, and they ended up giving out over 125,000 within like 3 months.
That seems to be like a theme that we run through, like through this entire panel, as we'll see when we talk about the rest of the figures, is how quickly and how many kind of, like, in terms of volume, how much was shifted for these mail away promotions, even going into, like, you know, the early 90s as well. Like it still shifted large amounts of quantity.
So the mail away process was fairly straightforward, you know, and we're going to be talking about, you know, 1982 all the way up to 2008. So there's, you know, a lot of dry years in between there, but we're talking about figures during those time periods. So, I mean, it's a very straightforward, you know, simple process. Basically, to do the mail away, to offer the promo, you know, a child would just cut out the flag points from the back of the card, the figures, or the boxes of the vehicles. In some cases, they would even receive the flag points in the mail when they would write letters to Hasbro asking questions or talking about what they want, what they like, as a thank you from Hasbro. And basically, they would take those flag points and take the mail order form that they would have and mail in those flag points with a shipping handling fee and the mail order form with the figures they wanted to Hasbro. And then 6 to 8 weeks later, they would get the toy in the mail.
You mean a lifetime? In a lifetime later?
Yeah, but, you know, remember, this was before internet. This was before, you know, dial-up and all that stuff. So kids were a lot more patient.
This was before humans.
Pretty much. I mean, just, you know, imagine how you were as a kid when it was, you know, to get mail. How awesome it was.
I don't think I can be included among the kids that were patient about waiting for the GI Joe for the mail.
No, I remember waiting for a certain period of time and then forgetting about it. Like, that's what would happen. It would be like 2 weeks would go by, it would be gone. Unless, obviously, it was one of those promotions that kept coming back in figures. And, like, you know, like I said, I wasn't going out and buying figures every single week. But, you know, you'd get the odd one every now and again. And if you had, like, that promotion, you might be like, oh, yeah, I'm getting Super Trooper or something. Sorry, spoiler alert. I'm getting Super Trooper or something. And then, you know, oh, yeah, I remember now. And then 6 to 8 weeks later, however long it was, it arrives. And you're just like, I've completely forgotten about this. And this is the happiest I think I'll ever be in life right now.
Well, that's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because that was the entire intention of the program. Because essentially what happened there,
torture.
While you were thinking of G.I. Joe in the moment, you placed the order for the mail away, and then sometime later, G.I. Joe had the opportunity to remind you of how much fun it is by one arriving in the mail, at which point you had another burst of excitement about the brand.
Yeah.
But really, the great thing about the mail-ins is that it almost was twofold benefit. It benefited the kids to some degree because you were getting things you wouldn't have necessarily been able to get otherwise. And it made G.I. Joe a lot more exciting, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And Agreed. It also benefited the companies because a lot of this stuff that were in mail away catalogs were often things that were Well, some of them were unique premiums, and some of them were ways to get rid of overstock, or some of them were maybe even pulled from an international run and just brought into it. So it was overall just a very good strategy that we all kind of benefited from.
Yeah, it was genius because, you know, a kid would go buy a toy and they would, like you said, you know, in the moment they would place the order. You know, 2 weeks later, by then they might have already stopped playing with G.I. Joe. They've moved on to the next big thing. They've kind of forgotten about it. Then boom, in the mail, here's a new G.I. Joe. With that G.I. Joe figure that they're now excited and playing with, and they're bringing out the old toys, is another order catalog. And in that catalog is reminding them, hey, this is what's on the retail and this is what else you can order. And in some cases, they're like, ooh, I want to order this. I need more flag points. Mom, take me to the store. Buy more G.I. Joes. Order another figure.
You sound like a horrible kid, by the way.
Yeah. But you know, you're playing, so the kids are now playing with toys again. They're now spending money. And they've ordered something. So 2 months later, it's just kind of it's a way to keep kids, you know, people interested in the G.I. Joe brand year round, even though there wasn't new product, you know, they just came out in those waves. So it was genius.
Yeah.
It's a great marketing ploy. Talking with Kurt Bazikian and listening to him talk actually to Carson with a 3D Joes, he was talking about how the Hasbro Direct was created. So basically, the mail-away process started, as we heard in that earlier audio clip, in which it just kind of happened fly on the cuff. And they eventually decided to go more professional, and they created Hasbro Direct. So in 1984, Hasbro actually hired a direct marketing advertising firm called BBDO out of New York. And Kirk left. He was no longer, you know, Hasbro took him off of running G.I. Joe and actually had him work with BBDO to create Hasbro Direct, in which, you know, they sold G.I. Joe, Transformers, My Little Ponies, and other things eventually. But they started off with G.I. Joe because that was the flagship that kind of started the whole mail-away process with the flag points.
No pun intended.
All right. So what was really cool about this is instead of them, you know, kind of figuring out how to do it, they hired a professional company that already had the knowledge and the skill sets to really make this work. And as we all saw, you know, the mail-away process, those catalogs, that art, that was all beautiful. And that was all done by BBDO and their outside artists and their design firm. But, you know, Kirk had final say-so on everything. So he approved everything we saw. So Hasbro did approve it, but Hasbro didn't necessarily create the campaigns. But they did amazing stuff. And BBDO ran it all the way up to the point when Hasbro Direct was basically shut down. I believe it's BBDO that ran it. Kirk was not the person that ran it the whole time. Other people, you know, followed after Kirk, but Kirk was there from 84 to 86. And he set it up and it was instrumental. It was amazing. We got good stuff. So now that we've kind of, you know, told you how it was created and what it was and how it worked, we're now going to talk about some toys, what we got.
Right, let's go over each figure year by year, starting in 1982 with such hits in the charts. I'm kidding. It's starting in 1982 with Cobra Commander, the first mail-away figure. So the concept of Cobra the Enemy was created during a meeting between Hasbro and Marvel. Hasbro did not have an actual bad guy to fight G.I. Joe. Larry Hama suggested the need for an opposition, obviously. Hasbro felt that all other toy lines were the opposition, but Larry pointed out the need for a clear and obvious opponent for the sake of the storyline. The name Cobra was suggested by Marvel editor Archie Goodwin. From there, Ron Ruda created Cobra Soldier, Cobra Officer, and Cobra Commander. Larry Hama created the Baroness, who appeared in the toy line later.
How amazing is it that they launched this brand, or they were getting ready to launch this brand, and they hadn't thought, oh, maybe we should have some bad guys. Like,
yeah,
I still, every time I hear that story, I can't wrap my brain around how they thought that play pattern was going to work without good guys and bad guys.
Yeah.
Like, that's the most basic rule of action figures.
Well, you say that, Troy, but in the UK, the same thing happened with Palatoy. That first year, 1982, it was just all the best-selling Action Man shrunk down to 5 POA, 3 3/4 size. And you had a German stormtrooper in there, but in terms of like an actual faction, they had to go like that didn't come until a year or so later, where Bob Breakin was approached to create a bad team, a bad guy team. I wonder if that actually, I've never really I think I have. Well, I spoke to Bob with an interview, but I'm not sure if he mentioned that. Was that like overspill from Hasbro, when they were like actually kind of working together because they had that relationship? I'll have to like double check that particular connection, because it could be the fact that Hasbro were turning the cogs about the bad guys. It got through to the marketing at Palitoy, and they decided to force the issue there as well, because it came from above at Palitoy when they changed ownership. So
Sure.
It could have been from Hasbro.
Well, we're Joe Classified, and instead of just showing you a picture of a production toy, we like to do the research and find other imagery and show it to you. So what we're going to be doing in this panel, as much as possible, is we're going to be showing you pre-production items, original art, and information we've uncovered through internal memos from Hasbro, things along those lines. So to start off, Cobra Commander, we would like to show you a earlier concept sketch that we're going to show you now. So this is really cool. Originally Ron Ruda would have come up with dozens, 5, 10, 20, whatever, mini concept sketches for each idea for each character. We've talked about this in other panels, but this was one of the ones that he created for Cobra Commander, and it's a lot more refined. So it's probably a later stage, maybe something they would have thought was a front runner for a possible final candidate. But this is great. This is a great photo, because here he is. He's bald. He has a big scar on his face that goes over his eyes, wearing an eye patch. He has a pirate earring and a big mustache. I kind of like to think that this is probably what Cobra Commander looks like underneath the helmet.
I also think that people may be looking at this thinking, hey, doesn't that look like Major Blood?
Yeah.
And I think it's a great example of ideas that don't get used then sometimes get recycled into later figures. And you'll see that a lot, where a concept for one item just kind of leads into another item whenever certain elements are taken out.
This to me is Cobra Commander, Major Blood, and the Night Creeper leader all having some sort of hilarious three-way and coming out with this massive tash. Dr. Mindbender as well. Throw Mindbender in there just for the tash, and sorted.
And just remember, Mindbender, Cobra Commander, and Major Blood were all created by Ron Ruda. So,
exactly. So at the point where he knew that that Cobra Commander would be wearing a helmet, wouldn't have a face shown, then moving on to Major Blood, well, why not pitch the eye patch and the huge mustache again?
Mustaches make you look evil. Everyone knows that.
That's why we complete it, Chris. We complete the mustache.
So evil, neutral, good. Good.
Amazing.
Following that concept sketch, the next sketch we have is actually a more refined final sketch that shows the Cobra Commander that we basically did get. And one of the cool things about this drawing is you can see that it's a drawing of the actual toy. You can see the joints where the legs and arms go, versus that of a typically all the artwork before this point would be that of an actual human, a dynamic pose of a character doing something.
Yeah.
So this is interesting because this actually shows us what the toy looks like.
I also love the little kind of triangular patch on the, it's on the belt, but then also on like the arm as well, kind of reminiscent of Mainframe. Is it? Does Mainframe have something similar like that?
Yeah, he's got something.
So
Yeah. Anyway, I kind of like that little detail.
And it's interesting because the stripe on the helmet that would end up in other media and not on the figure is in the concept for Cobra Commander.
Yeah, that's crazy cool. And I can show you that with the little helmet stripe. There you go. Sunbow style.
And as the art shows it, it's basically, an accent piece to, bring out his trousers. But, in the
Thank you, by the way.
But in the comic book, Larry Hama had that as the access hatch through the plastic explosive set. So if anybody were to tamper with this helmet, it would blow up and kill him, and they can never find out his true identity.
It's amazing what Larry could write about just a stripe on somebody.
I want to say that it looks like they've used this sketch to base the GameStop Cobra Commander helmet, because it's like super bulbous, like
What?
really, yeah. But then again, it's got to fit on some massive heads, so I understand.
Probably still won't fit on mine. And you know what, actually, I will say about Cobra Commander is the mail-away forms that we see online were commonly found in the store. While a lot of mail-aways would be inserted into the package, I can remember finding my Cobra Commander mail-away offer on a tablet that was attached to a shelf talker right in front of the G.I. Joes. You just walk into Kmart, tear one off, and excited.
Kmart? You were
Sorry.
a Kmart shopper?
Can we go over that comment? Can we go over that comment? Just break it down a little. You would walk into Kmart and tear one off. That sounds
Yes.
incredible.
Was what got you laughing.
All right.
That's staying in. That's
Working
staying
at
in.
Kmart one summer, it's true. People did it all the time.
Moving along.
Okay, so in 1983, we get Duke, designed by Ron Rudat. The figure was available as an early release mail-away figure. It was later repackaged and sold the next year at retail. Later, it was available again as a mail-away offer. So this one's pretty cool. This one has differences, I believe, than the later released carded version. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, Duke's a little bit of an interesting one because he was available several times and they had a lot of minor changes along the way. The most commonly known change on Duke, it's a little bit difficult to pin down at this point because he has a lot of yellowing that's gone on over the years, so it's very hard to compare. As a person interested in variations myself, I would love it if I had some better images of all of the carded Dukes, including like the one that was available with a VHS offer, but I don't have those. All I have are some loose ones and a little bit of matching up with some images to figure out where those came from. But the most interesting thing that almost everybody knows about is that the original Duke actually included a decal for a flag. In Duke's card art, he has a flag logo on the side of his arm, and that did get included with the earliest mail-ins. And the mail-ins actually had a difference in the head sculpt from some of the later ones that came out carded. And that is that the size of his head changed and the amount of sculpt in his hair also was altered. So
That sounds a bit like myself.
what?
The amount of sculpt product I use in my hair increased over time.
Yes, this is, and you would not be able to fit a helmet on your head if it was sculpted that way. Some days, right?
Yes, that's why I had to
actor.
shave the sides off to fit it on. Yeah.
That's exactly what Duke's problem was, because we actually have an FEP, which is a final engineering pilot that would have been sent to Hasbro for approval of Duke. And if you take a look at him, his ears actually are a lot bigger to look at him from the front. If you look at him from the side, you can kind of see that his hairline sticks out a little bit more. And both of those things would have made it difficult to get a helmet on the figure. I know my earlier figure that I got, the mail-in with the flag on sticker on his arm, whenever you put the helmet on, it would a little bit tilt forward. It didn't fit very, very nicely on the figure. And I'm certain, seeing that FEP, that it kind of tells the story of why that change was made. They needed Duke to look good in a helmet.
And another thing that's kind of interesting is also with the mail away that there was also variations in the file card on this figure too. So you have variations on the toy itself on its head. There's variations on the file card. There's a lot of aspects of ways to collect this toy. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. There's a close-up of Duke on the file card, whereas the one that was at retail was the framing of the card art was a little bit further back. But what a lot of people don't know is that change actually happened during the mail-in. So you can get the mail-in both ways, and then, of course, the retail version just the one way.
Cools. So, does anyone else think that Duke's head's a little bit goofy?
Well,
don't actually have this art that we could find because it was in an earlier presentation that Gary Goggles had done at Assembly Required as well. And one of the earlier sketches of Duke actually has a call out on it. And maybe this is why he looks a little goofy. His smile was similar to He-Man. It was intended to evoke a little bit of that same friendliness that He-Man was. was also
as he punched the screen. Yeah, got it.
that's right. But the He-Man
And, you know-
figure kind of has a smile, but it's not like a super excited smile, but
Like
he's
mine.
a guy. It lets you know that he's one of the good guys.
And, you know,
Absolutely.
we're showing you here some imagery that we have that, you know, a Ron Rudat pencil and a Ron Rudat color study that you can see it. And, you know, in it, it has his smile. And Gary, our friend Gary, was able to meet Bill Merklin, who was a sculptor of this character Duke. And he was able to ask him some questions. And that's actually, it's on YouTube. You can see the interview and the videos with Bill Merklin. And in that, someone actually wrote in questions for Gary to ask. And one of those questions was, why does he have such a goofy smile? And as Bill pointed out, Bill's like, I don't make these decisions. I simply sculpt what they give me. And Hasbro's the one that put the goofy smile on him.
Yeah. Bill Merklin's an absolute genius as well, like crazy good sculptor. I love his stuff on the Visionaries. And so, okay, well, moving on from Duke, staying in 1983, we have Major Blood. Designed by Ron Rudat. This was a bad man, and Ron created him that way. He wears the dog tags of the soldiers he is killed. His concept name was Bad Guy Number 1. Major Blood is an improvement right there. You can really imagine going, I'm Bad Guy Number 1. Can you really? The figure came with a non-articulated right arm. His arm was covered in armour to protect it from the backblast of the rocket pistol. The sculpt sheet drawn by Ron Rudat implies his original vision might have had some level of articulation. There is an indication of a break where the swivel arm joint would be placed. The art was drawn on May 19th, 1982.
So that sculpt sheet, you know, in this video, you see that's the original. That's the one that was drawn by Ron Rudat. And, you know, so Ron drew that right arm, and it's a little more bent than the one we got. You know, it's a little more, but, you know, he doesn't actually have the articulation, the joint drawn in like he does on the other arm. But somebody went in there and drew a line across it and wrote the word break. So I don't know if it was Ron Rudat that changed his mind or thought about this after he did it, or if maybe someone else from Hasbro while going over the sculpt was like, hey, maybe we could put a break here so you get some aspect of the of articulation, which we never got. But it's interesting to me that at least on some of this internal documentation that it showed there was a possibility that we could have had, you know, a swivel arm on that figure.
Yeah, it's a shame we didn't actually get that, because I think that would have made that figure like basically perfect. Like the design's really cool. The articulation, other than that aspect on the arm, is really, you know, is like any G.I. Joe figure of the time, really good. So, and the sculpt level's really cool as well. So it's a shame that is one thing that kind of, I don't know, kind of keeps it from like the real upper echelons of like great figures. But I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about that.
It had that same joint as on the 94 Major Blood, where it's got the pin where it locks into place, and you get both where it's solid or it's still fully articulated. That's the best thing about that 94 figure.
Absolutely. I think that maybe one of the things to keep in mind is that during that time they were still kind of developing the swivel arm. We actually had used the image. Well, I used it already online, but Cobra Commander with the development of his swivel arms. Anyway, the point that I'm getting at is that Major Blood and Destro were kind of also being developed concurrently. And Destro he's kind of unique because in addition to that Major Blood that you just mentioned, the later one, he's one of the few figures that the swivel arm joint is actually sculpted. So I'm wondering if maybe what the issue was, because these were not being sent to Bill Merkline yet. I don't think Merkline didn't work on Major Blood. I'm thinking that maybe they intended to do a fully sculpted and jointed arm without that unique elbow piece. And that because that didn't work out, maybe that's why it ended up all as one solid arm.
Yeah.
Possible.
So the file card for the mail away has variant text compared to retail. The character is a poet who wrote bad poetry. I know some of those people.
You don't look at me when you say that.
I'm absolutely looking at you. Early versions say of the poem are, when you're feeling low and woozy, slap a fresh clip in your Uzi, assume the proper firing stance, and make the suckers jump and dance. Later
I really thought that was going to end in pants, but carry on.
It could. I mean, it rhymes. The retail version has a mercenary's job is a heartless one. I'm a soldier for hire, like a pawn shop gun. My ruthless tactics keep you on your toes, 'cause I fight 'em all, whether friend or foes. Deep.
Now, I kind of like that because for me, I feel like that second poem was kinder, not as scary,
yeah.
not as. So, I feel like that when they first released that figure, and Ron drew him with all those dog tags, and basically said, these are from the G.I. Joes he's killed, or taken captive. I'm sure they probably would have changed it if that actually got out. But, he killed him. So, they called him bad guy number 1. He's covered in dog tags of fallen soldiers. And then he's writing this poetry about, shooting people or shooting at people with an Uzi. And, and it's a children's toy. So that's why I kind of feel like in my mind, they're like, ooh, we need to tone this down a tiny bit. And they changed it to, a less graphic poem.
Fun side note, no version of Major Blood has ever come with an Uzi accessory.
Well,
they couldn't think. Nothing else rhymed with woozy, did it? Rocket-propelled pistol didn't rhyme with woozy, so.
Okay, and the Major Blood mail-away offer was actually different than previous mail-aways or any that followed. This toy was not acquired by submitting flag points. There was a very short window, and you had to actually buy 3 new G.I. Joes between January 25th and February 28th, 1983.
Wow.
You needed to mail away the dated receipt and cut out the faces of the 3 new action figures from the front of the card art and mail away the offer with shipping and handling fees. This was marketed as a special early release offer from Hasbro for a figure that would be released at retail in the next few months. Kirk Bazigian later hypothesized that the reason for having people mail in the cutout faces with dated receipts was to get people to buy the peg warmers still in the stores to allow retailers to order the new 1983 inventory. So that short window was particularly targeting just the figures that were on the shelves right at that time. But I have to tell you that as a kid who, by the end of 1982, had every figure but Grunt, this did not sit well with a lot of parents who were then being asked to rebuy the same figures. My mother was not real happy with that, and so she wrote a letter to Hasbro, and we actually received in the mail one of the Major Blood letters that is kind of a cool letter to have that explains that there was a communication that Cobra had taken over, and that this promotion that was not intended was the idea of Cobra. And
Amazing.
By the way, we will send you a Major Blood figure in a little bit. So I was.
So you got the figure anyway without buying the new toys?
That's correct. Yes.
Son of a bee.
Yeah.
Because we'd already cut out our file cards and we'd saved the flag points. But that top portion of the card, that was already in the trash.
Isn't that
You have
sad?
the dated receipt.
How upsetting it would be after you've thrown them away 2 months ago to be told, hey, that thing you threw away, you kind of need those now to get blood.
But,
So-
like I said, you had to have the dated receipt. So those old toys.
That's right. Well, you didn't have to have the dated receipt or the faces.
Apparently.
Yeah, just an angry letter from mom would do it. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that is that the UK did a similar thing where you'd cut out, and we'll come to that in a little while actually, we'd cut out little medals, action medals, and pin them onto the order form that was, and it was all on the card anyway. But then also you had to cut out faction badges at one point as well to get another figure. So you're kind of ripping up that card, man. Which is such a shame because, like, could you imagine being asked to do that now in the kind of modern era of collecting? Like, could you imagine being asked to, basically that artwork that we got like a really prominent artist to do, didn't credit them, but made them do it. And now, you've got to chop it up and, I couldn't do it. I really couldn't.
Well,
Imagine chopping up Hector Garrido now, knowing how influential he's been. Like, I can't do it, guys.
Well, I mean, this was, the one thing I like about this now as an adult, reading this and learning this is that, it points out that, as much as I think of G.I. Joe as a toy that was like an important part of my life and, a hero for us to emulate, but, it was actually a brand and it was a business, and Hasbro was there to make money. And they were basically, G.I. Joe was their money, and they wanted to make sure that we spent as much of it as they could get from us. So I mean, it's a brilliant plan for them. It sucked for us, because like Pat said, everyone already had the flag points. They told us you get toys with flag points, and here they are, totally sticking it to us and changing it around, saying no, I'm doing it different now. So
It was genius, marketing
It was
genius.
taken over by Cobra. That's what the letter says. I buy it.
And wasn't this particular figure the Major Blood? Wasn't this the one where the mail away offer was actually in stores and not in packaging?
Yes, it was also a tear off. It was like a different. There's a lot more blue on the tear off pack on the tear off. But yes, it was
So you're basically wandering into Kmart and just tearing one off again. Is that what you're saying?
Yep, tearing one off in Kmart again.
Okay, brilliant. That's going to be on a T-shirt from now on. I'm going to do a Joe Declassified tearing one off in Kmart T-shirt with an image. Anyway,
right,
okay.
You
Well,
were just talking about Palatoy, and that kind of leads us into the next figure.
funny thing is, all three of us were trying to segue that then, and Pat just goes, "Right, I'm going to do it." No, you're absolutely right, Pat. So in 1983, Palatoy released their first promotion, their first cardback promotion. Now this was the Action Force Commander. And in 1982, there was a running cardback promotion to get a free commander, and it was released in 1983. It came out in 1983, so it's over those 2 years that it was kind of in effect. Now, it required 5 Action Force medals found on all figure cards and a 30 pence postal order to cover shipping. Carry the Y, that's 630 trillion US dollars today. One other variant is known that utilizes the Mission Pilot torso as well instead. So you had this figure that was effectively repainted as the Commander version 2, which was another mail away later on, spoiler alert, and the Enemy Black Major as well. So this figure kind of got reutilized quite often. And then we've got, like, as I'm flashing images up, as I can do that, we've also got some pretty interesting first shots that they exist, and a prototype that was used in some of the kind of promotional materials, or some of the materials like the Toy Fair catalogs and so on and so forth.
And should have kept the red limbs.
Honestly, there's one, again, big shout out to Blood for the Baron for the images on there, but the lineup of, and I'll flash this up too, of all of those particular kind of first shot figures with, like all the different colors, it is incredible. It kind of looks a little bit like this Red Wolf display I've got going on over here. I'm not sure if you can see that. If you can't, I'll take a picture of it and flash that up on the screen as well. But anyway, yeah, so that was the 1983 Palatoy Action Force Commander. And then, as I said, it was released again in the same year, 1983, as the kind of as the Z Force Action Force Commander. 1983 cardback promotion required, again, 5 Action Force medals. Again, you could cut those out. It came with the first one done. So you had the first one there, and then the other ones you'd cut out and you'd stick on the spaces that were left. And you'd have the 5, well, you'd have 4 and the one that you already, on the card. And you'd send off the promotion and you'd get this figure back. Now, again, the same kind of situation, another variant of this particular figure and this particular mail away in this particular year does utilize the Mission Pilot torso as well. And I'll flash images up of all of that stuff as we talk about it. When they exhausted all of their commander stock, Skeletron figures were actually sent in his place with a note explaining the situation, which I will gracefully display to my left. I have to really figure out what's going on there. And that kind of leads into 1984's Palatoy Red Shadow's Skeletron. But before we go there, any comments on the Commander, guys?
I actually have a question. So whenever that Skeletron was substituted in,
yes,
people already aware of Skeletron, or was that like, oh, who's this whenever he arrived?
So yeah, I mean, it's weird because the Skeletron kind of offer was actually, I think, late 1983 going into 1984. So I guess they had all of that. They had the Skeletron figures there, and then I don't know if this. I think there must have been some sort of overlap at that point, but I don't know exactly which one came first, whether it was the replacements for the Commander or the actual release of the Skeletron mail away. I think it's the release of the Skeletron mail away, but there is a very kind of close crossover at that point. I'm guessing as soon as they started sending Skeletrons out, they were also maybe sending out Skeletrons in place of those commanders. But it's all it's so difficult to find that information out, because in terms of paperwork, it just never seems to exist for Action Force stuff, or it's like deep in someone's basement. Deep in someone's like loft or basement, so it's like, we don't know, or it's thrown away or whatever. So in terms of getting the information for that's really difficult, and for people to remember this stuff and like the dates, it's almost impossible.
That's a sad recurring theme. A lot of this stuff, the reason why we're researching it is because of the fact that a lot of that stuff is foggy.
Yeah. But it's really cute because they sent a little note as well to explain what the situation was, and this new Skeletron figure is going to be in place. So, cheer up. So yes, we get the Red Shadows Skeletron again. This one designed by Bob Breakin, originally as the Robo Skull pilot. Now this gets really interesting because we have a really good image of a prototype, kind of like a kit bash for a Robo Skull and this Skeletron pilot, which Bob produced and showed to the marketing team when he was told to do the Red Shadow, well, he was told to make an enemy team, basically. So he comes up with this really cool, utilizing the logo of the Red Shadows, which was a skull and crossbones, to create this incredible vehicle, but then also to create this really cool pilot, this kind of cyborg skeleton with this red central section, and then these weird pistons on some of the bones on the arms and the legs. So it's and I've also got a really nice kind of it's almost like a poster art that Bob did. He sketched and colored and drew this kind of almost like big bio card for Skeletron, which I'll again flash up on screen. He did a bunch of them for prints at Rollout Roll Call for a year as well, and it's just really nice to see all the details of what the different parts on Skeletron actually mean. And that's really cool. So anyway, in the meeting, he's pitching this as the pilot for the Robo Skull, and the marketing team say, no, that's not the pilot for the Robo Skull. Sorry, I think he called Skeletron a Robo Skull, and he said, no, that's a Robo Skull, and he's going to be used in some other fashion. So they decided to use him as a mail away further down the line, and they made Bob create Red Wolf for Robo Skull. That's kind of it in a very quick, brief description.
Robo Skull was supposed to be the pilot for. I'm sorry. Skeletron was going to be the pilot for Robo Skull?
Correct. Yeah, that's what Bob had planned. And then when he kind of presented it to the marketing team, they were kind of like, no, this is what we want you to do with this. We love both of them, but we don't want them to be together. It's like skeleton overkill. So they wanted him. They basically wanted a pilot that was very much like, I don't know, had the gear, very much like like Star Wars inspired and stuff like that. But actually, Bob has said in the past that he wasn't thinking of a TIE fighter pilot when he did Red Wolf. In actual fact, he created, and this blew my mind at the time when I interviewed him, because I hadn't noticed, and I'm stupid for not noticing it, if you guys probably already have, but the helmet was designed like a wolf, like it's got a long snout that sticks out. Never dawned on me. Never. How ridiculous is that? In any case, that's what he did, and he did that on purpose. And again, he's got another sketch image showing all of that with everything that Red Wolf is about, his bio and and all that kind of stuff. And it's even got like a wolf on the actual sketch, which is really cool as well. It was a 1984 cardback promotion for Skeletron, and it required the 5 Action Force medals again, but this time a 35p postal order, because inflation, baby. So moving on into 1984, the Palitoy Red Shadows Kraken. Again, designed by Bob Breakin. He seemed to do all of the kind of monsters and the creatures. He did those so well. This was available via a promo leaflet provided in vehicle boxes in 1984 and was released carded shortly after anyway. It required 3 Action Force team badges found on any carded figure and a completed form, and I'll flash the both sides of that form up. Again, it's very sketchy. It's very almost rushed a little bit. I love that, the kind of the kind of very notey visual of what they've done there with that particular kind of promotion. Joe Declassified will return after these messages.